This is the One Girl Revolution podcast, a podcast that highlights the stories of world-changing women and girls across the country. We hope that these stories inspire you, but even more so, we hope that these stories help you to see your own value, your purpose, and your power to change the world through your life. Every woman and girl is a One Girl Revolution. Welcome to the One Girl Revolution podcast. It's your girl, Kate, here. This week's episode is a continuation of our special series focused on female empowerment, protection, and the fight to reclaim your story and your life. In fact, this episode wraps up our special SASSGO series, and I can't think of a better guest to close it out with. Today, I am so honored to be joined by James Hamilton, a personal security expert, founder of Hamilton Security Group, and someone whose work is quite literally saving and changing lives. James has spent decades working in threat assessment and personal security, including with Gavin DeBecker, and now through his own company, where he supports individuals and families across the country in mitigating risk and protecting what matters most. James is only the second man ever to be featured on the One Girl Revolution podcast, and I am so excited to have him on. I met James last year at SASSGO's I Will Survive weekend, and his training, wisdom, and presence had a profound impact on me and every woman in the room. I've carried his advice and insights with me ever since, and I've applied them in my own life to feel safer, more confident, and more empowered. I cannot wait for you to hear from him and to learn from him. In this episode, James shares his own life story, how he got into this work, the risks that women face every single day, how to trust your intuition, and what we can all do to protect ourselves, our families, and our communities. We had listeners and Instagram followers that sent in all kinds of questions, and James was so generous with his time and went through every single one with me. This is a longer episode, but it is jam-packed with life experiences, insight from James, and so much wisdom. You will walk away from this episode not only informed, but empowered. And don't forget to register for SASSGO's I Will Survive weekend before the end of July and use the code ONEGIRL, that's the number 1GIRL, to save $100. It is a life-changing experience and we want you to be there. And James will be there too, so you'll get to hear more from him at the I Will Survive weekend. So without further ado, let's get into it. Here's my conversation with James. James, welcome to the One Girl Revolution podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being on. You were actually only the second man to ever be on the One Girl Revolution podcast. We had Olin on last week, and I'm so grateful to have you on. So much of the work that you do is so critical for women and girls, for everybody, but for women and girls specifically to know about. So thank you for making the time.
You're welcome.
So before we get into all the great work that you're doing, I would love to rewind. This podcast is all about really the evolution story. So kind of, how we got to where we are. And I know we're also always becoming who we were created to be. And so I would love to rewind and just hear a little bit about your story, who you are, where you're from, and maybe what led you to get into this work.
Well, I grew up in Kentucky and, the parents divorced very early. And obviously that, played a pretty significant role, I think, in, kind of my childhood. I had always kind of had a very innate sense of my situation, and that could probably be just due to the background or the life I was in. But I always knew where I was, meaning I always was aware of my senses. I was always aware of smell, hearing, very heightened to that. And that's a very common thing you'll see is folks that kind of maybe, I'm not going to say had a tough childhood, but maybe there were some challenges. And then, I was very fortunate. My father, Vietnam veteran, I didn't see him often, but he was very, very good at personal security. He really understood time and he really helped me. And I think you probably heard it at the weekend, but he really helped me with using the environment and, first of all, being being aware of the environment. Second of all, being aware of the situation. People talk all the time about situational awareness, but they never say the real reality. What's the situation? People want to hurt you, period. Okay. Like, let's not sugarcoat it. And that's unfortunately what a lot of people do. They try to sugarcoat it. People want to hurt you. Um, and so he gave me some really good things to think about. And one of the biggest things he taught me was the ability to use time or create time. Anyway, and so that kind of, I don't know, it was always interesting. I was always kind of into that. I liked guns at a very early age, as most guys do, I think. My first like 16th birthday present was a Colt 45. I've still got it. But I was really into that world. I really liked all that stuff, probably because, I wanted his approval and all that. And then I went into law enforcement. So, and I was one of those people that easily could have been a criminal. I mean, and that's very common. You'll see that. You'll see people say, I could have gone one side of the law, like law enforcement or criminal. And I definitely could have gone criminal easily. And I was very lucky. A couple times I got out of things just by literally a guardian angel. But I guess that's how I got into it. I mean, I had some other things that exposed me to like the Secret Service and the DEA and all of that world, the DC world. As a kid, I was into politics and I went to DC for like a week, and I got really enamored with the Secret Service and all of that government stuff. So that's kind of, I guess, how I got into it. I mean, I never, let me back up. I didn't like always want to be an FBI agent. Like, I actually wanted to be a fighter pilot, but I couldn't see very well. And so then I had to have another plan. So that's really for me. I just kind of want to be in the federal world and became a police officer to get into the federal world. But that was kind of what happened. Kind of.
Yeah, so well, I think it's so important for us to see those different glimmers in our life, right? To think about my mom grew up in Detroit, and I live in Detroit now, but the things that I learned as a kid, she kind of was similar to your dad, was very aware of her surroundings and taught us that from a young age. So we were never fearful. I don't feel like I was ever living in fear. I just always was prepared. And I know that's a big part of the work that you're doing, is like when you're prepared and you're aware of your surroundings and you know the different tools that you can use to get out of a situation or interact with a situation, you don't really live in fear. At least that's my experience.
I think that's smart. I think one thing, like I rode the city bus as a kid. And I was exposed to just a lot of that world. What I mean by that world is like there's some crazy stuff that happens on those buses. I was always exposed to stuff like that. My mom worked in the jail when I was a little kid, and I used to go hang out with the jail guys, the trustees, and have dinner with them. So I was exposed to it very early. Like I understood, what I mean by understood, like I knew people like that. I knew killers. I mean, I knew some really tough people. And it's just violence, it's like being comfortable with violence, and that's what it is. And people, who use violence, they're comfortable with it. So I was never really uncomfortable in that world. And things actually, I don't know if we'll get into it, but like when I got involved in SWAT and the FBI and all that, like everything would slow down for me. Like when we would breach a door, the world would just slow down. It would not get crazy. It would be like, oh, this is very like all the screaming and hollering and loud noise. I was very used to all that stuff.
Mm.
And so I was like, yeah, just do your job. It's not personal, you know. Anyway.
So walk me through. So you grow up, you decide that you're going to get into law enforcement. Walk me through maybe just kind of an overview. There are a lot of questions that we got emailed in, so I want to make sure we get to all the questions that people had for you. But if you could just kind of give me an overview of the work that you did leading up to your work with Gavin DeBecker and then getting into the Hamilton Security Group.
Well, when I was in college, like I said, I wanted to be a fighter pilot, so I went to military college. And when I banged that flight physical, had to do something else. Well, I was getting a major in criminal justice. And one of the classes that they let us do there is we could do a ride-along internship program with the Charleston Police Department. So that's what I did. And I did it for 6 months and I loved it. I thought this was the coolest thing. I'm like, I didn't know you got paid like to do chase bad guys. I just thought it was great. And so when I was about to graduate, I went to the FBI and I said, hey, I want to be an FBI agent. And they said, well, go to law school or go be a police officer because we don't hire anybody out of college. And so I was like, okay. And I wasn't going to go to law school. So I knew my father knew the sheriff in Columbia, South Carolina. And so I got a job. And I was like, and it was great because I got that job in like October of my senior year. So I was already set. I knew where I was going when I graduated. I was going to go work as a deputy, blah, 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 blah. So I went to work as a deputy, and the FBI told me, hey, do 3 years, and then apply. And that's exactly what I did. I did 3 years at the sheriff's office. I applied, and I didn't hear anything for a year. Uh, this was before email. This was like handwritten letters back in the day. And then I went a year without hearing anything. I got promoted to a detective, and I was like working burglary. I loved it. Then I ended up getting the FBI called me, and then whatever. Fast forward, I got an appointment to Quantico to an FBI class. They call them basic new agent classes. And I was 9724 was my class number. I went in and they tell you one thing. They'll tell you you'll never come home again. So they'll tell you to your face and your wife's face in a very callous way, I think, hey, you'll never come back here. And that was very hard. My wife was from a very small town in South Carolina. So anyway, I get through training school and they give you a city or an office of assignment. And I went to Omaha, Nebraska. I was assigned to a white collar crime squad and I was in hell. I was in absolute HE double hockey sticks hell. White collar crime is very boring. It's not for someone like me. I'm very aggressive. I didn't want to deal with it. No violence. It was like, a pen, using your pen as a weapon type stuff. So I was in hell. And I got set. Basically, I got real lucky. I got on the SWAT team. Every FBI office has a SWAT team. And then I got uh, transferred to the drug squad. So I was working violent crime, drugs. I was like as good as it could be. Anyway, fast forward into the SWAT teams and the FBI, they do close protection. So bodyguard type stuff. So I started protecting people and I loved it. I'm like, this is really cool. Well, unfortunately, that's not what the FBI does for a thing. That's not their job, right? That's what the Secret Service does. So there's only two opportunities in the FBI, and that's the Attorney General's detail or the director of the FBI's detail. So I put in for the FBI director's detail, I think 3 times, and I finally got it. I got transferred to Washington and I was assigned to Director Bob Mueller for 4 years, full-time protective detail. Great job. I mean, just fantastic. That's all we did was close protection, very small unit. Loved it. Um, I'm getting to the Gavin Becker thing. So then after 4 years, I'd been gone like a lot of travel. I needed to kind of stop doing that because I was probably going to get divorced. It was bad. I was a lot of travel. So I got off the detail. I went to Quantico as a tactical instructor. I was teaching new agents how to stay alive, personal security, like don't get dead, all that stuff. And kind of in the interim of that, I got a call from a guy that I worked with, and he said, "Hey, will you create a close protection school at the FBI? Because there was one." I said, "Yeah." So I did. And by that point, I was the program manager for something called the Overseas Survival Program, which was, again, personal security, unarmed, working overseas. Everyone going overseas for the FBI had to come through my school. And we were giving out this book called The Gift of Fear. And it was written by this guy named Gavin Becker. And it was all about intuition. It was all about, pre-warning signs to bad things happening. And loved it. I didn't know the guy at a protection company. I didn't know anything about him. I just thought he was an author. So then someone told me, hey, there's another book he wrote. It's called Just 2 Seconds. It's about close protection. I'm like, what does he know about close protection? And they're like, no, he has bodyguard company. I'm like, what? So anyway, when I created that FBI school, I found a drill in that book called Time and Distance, and I took it and I put it in the FBI training. I didn't ask him for permission. I just did it because I thought, well, this makes sense. It's smart. And he somehow found out. I don't know how he found out, but he called me or emailed me and said, hey, my name's Gavin DeBecker. Are you using my stuff at the FBI? And I thought I was like violating some trademark. I really thought I was in trouble. And I said, yes, sir, I am. And he was like very excited and complimentary. And he embraced me. And we started talking. We started having these really philosophical discussions about assassinations from history, Caesar, Lincoln, Kennedy. I mean, we would have these very long, long, long discussions. And then at some point, I don't know when it was, but he at some point said, why don't you come work for me? And I was like, hmm. And I was like 7 or 8 years short of retirement. And I said, I think this is a good idea. So in 2015, I resigned from the FBI and I was a director. What was I? Director of Protection Strategy at Gavin. And then I ended up becoming a senior vice president. And I was running all training, operations, internal affairs, and policy and procedures. And I did that for about 10 years. Um, Loved every minute of it. Just great, great people over there. And I am still a consultant for them. And in 2014, I created this thing called the Hamilton Security Group because I just wanted to be my own boss and kind of do my thing. And that's what I did. Is that good?
Yeah,
Does that
no, that's
answer?
great. That's a
All
great
right.
overview. And, there's such a need for the work that you're doing and Gavin Becker. And people don't realize, I don't think they realize that there aren't that many individuals and there aren't that many groups that are actually doing this work. So I think it's really incredible what you were able to do. And I'm sure learn so much from Gavin Becker's team and then branch off into doing your own work. So let's talk about the Hamilton Security Group. Tell me about the work that you do now.
Well, yeah, real quick on him, let me just say that if anyone listening has read the book, any of his books, but probably The Gift of Fear is where they start, and then they go into others. There's a really good one called Protecting the Gift or Fearless. But I would tell you this, he was a mentor, still is a mentor to me, and he talks that way. Like as you read the book, like he actually talks like that. And it was fascinating to work with him. I can't even tell you how much I learned from that person. I will forever be indebted to him. But really, what happened, I wanted to do a certain thing. And what that certain thing is what my company does, is I wanted to help Fortune 500 EP teams become better. That's really what I do. And that's what I love doing. Not a whole lot of people do it. It's very niche. It's very, very small market. Um, and I do personal security awareness training for employees and regular folks, not bodyguards, not law enforcement, just regular people trying to live their life. I do this thing called the safety seminar. That's it. Those are the two things I do. Um, and I love it, And when Brian Thompson was killed in United Health, I mean, my phone was blowing up because people wanted to understand this world. And that's what I do. I help people. I'm a consultant to companies to understand, hey, do you need an EP program? First of all, do you even need protection? And second of all, if they do have protection, well, let me assess that team to make them better and then train them, if they need training. So that's really what I do. And then not a lot, but I probably like I'm going tomorrow to do one, but probably five, six, eh, more than that, maybe 10 times a year. I do personal security awareness training for employees of companies who want to hire me to help their folks. And it's like beyond run, hide, fight, active shooter. Like it's when I'm at McDonald's with my kid, how do I keep myself safe? Like that's what the safety seminar is all about. Yeah, so that's what we do.
It's so practical. And even James, when you and I met at the I Will Survive weekend last year, literally everything that you talked about is ingrained in my brain. Everything. And we'll get into some of the like specifics that you talked about. But it's so important. And like SASSGO teaches, and I know you teach this as well, the more that we practice, even in our minds, and like think through scenarios, the easier it gets if something were to happen. Because the reality is, and I know you talk about this a lot, in this world that we live in, things are going to happen. And we are always, especially women, I know 1 in 3 women are, either sexually assaulted or stalked or there's some sort of abuse, 1 in 3. And so women especially need to know how to protect themselves in these scenarios.
Yeah, I mean, I think two quick things on that. One is the value of mental rehearsal. And so people will talk about this all the time. And like athletes will talk about this all the time. And it's completely fine for Michael Jordan, Tiger Woods, whoever, Caitlin Clark to talk about mental rehearsal. Before they shoot a free throw, they visualize it in their head, right? Everyone is fine with that. But if I tell you, hey, do mental rehearsal when you're at the Target parking lot and you're thinking about getting out of your car, like, what would I do if some guy came up to me and tried to, assault me? People look at me like I'm crazy. Like, oh, how dare you? Why would you try to scare people? And that's like in the safety seminar, like, I don't need to scare you. I just show you like no crap reality. Like this happened. Here's a newspaper article from Staples or Publix or Target. This is what happened. Guy sticks a knife in a lady's throat in the parking lot, says, get in. What do you do? right? I'm not making this up. I don't need to scare people. I'm just trying to deal with reality. Like, and unfortunately, everyone's like, people look at me like I'm splitting atoms. I'm not splitting atoms. I just am talking to you directly about reality, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it, right? Because you don't need to. But for me, it's like, Gavin again taught me this, but you're the patient. I have to tell you, you've got cancer, okay? And this is what we do with cancer. Like we tear it out. I'm not going to pretend and tell you, oh no, it's okay. If you just keep going on, this cancer is not going to hurt you. I'm not going to do that, right? But that's unfortunately what a lot of people will do because they don't want to tell the truth. Like, hey, you probably don't want to go jogging alone as a woman in America. I don't know. Try that. Oh, well, that's mean. That's not fair. Uh, it may not be fair, but guess what? Bad things happen, period. Now, if you want that to happen to you, okay, but I think that's a bad idea.
We need to be aware of what's going on and also take practical steps, right? You talk about so many different practical steps, like even, if you're going running, there was a podcast that I listened to of you talking about a scenario where you were working with a client and they were like, "Oh, I like to run." And you
Mhm.
were like, "All right, here are your options. Go
Yep.
run at the gym." Well,
Yep.
that's not an option. I want to run outside. Okay. And then can you talk me through that?
Yeah, it's just risk mitigation. So I encourage everyone to do it, and it's very simple. And it's just find the safest thing you can do, right? That's okay. And the example that you're discussing is, a client says, "Hey, when I travel, I like to jog." And it was a woman. And I'm like, well, jog on the treadmill in your hotel. Well, I don't want to use a treadmill. Um, okay. Well, I want to go outside. Okay, take a friend. Well, I don't have any friends. Okay, don't use ear pods. Well, I like to listen to music while I run. Okay, don't go at night. Go in the daytime and have your phone with you and be prepared to call somebody and also run to a safe haven. Take a dog. I don't have a dog. Rent a dog. Like, we're just trying to work through all the different things you can do to make it safer. Obviously, the safest thing is okay, if you don't want to get hurt running, don't in the public, don't go running in public, right? Like I tell the story about my sister wanting to go skydiving when she turned 40. She asked me to go. I'm like, no, I'm not going to die in an airplane, skydiving accident. I'm not going to do it. Right. So like I can eliminate that. Um, and a lot of things in our life we can eliminate, but some things we can't, like going to work or going to the grocery store or whatever. And in those situations, mitigate, right? Like Target. Target's a good example, or Walmart, doesn't matter, big box store. Go during the day, keep your phone in your purse. Don't go at night. Don't go alone. Get away from people who are giving you that look, but you got to see them, and the only way you see them is have your phone down, like, but that's how we mitigate. And remember, I talk a lot about mission and task. The mission, stay alive. The task is go to Walmart. So you see guys, corralling by your car, and you think, well, I need to get to my car. No, no, no. Go back inside the Walmart and call 911. Because the mission is your safety. The task is the damn Walmart shopping. Leave the cart, leave the crap, go back inside. But people won't do that. They're like, no, I don't want to be that way. I need to be nice. Society's conditioned me to be nice, especially a woman. And then they'll try to pretend that, okay, nothing bad's going to happen. I'm just going to go up to the car because I don't want to be that way. And then all of a sudden something does happen, right? And we'll probably get into it, but you asked me to give you an example of that very thing of where I know somebody that didn't listen to their intuition and bad things happened to them. I can tell you a great story about an FBI agent and it was a guy. That's exactly what happened to him.
Yeah. Tell me that story.
So he was a SWAT agent. No, he was not SWAT. It doesn't matter. He was an agent in Los Angeles. He was working wiretap. He's working street gangs, and he was coming home, and he has a girlfriend, and she was on FBI, and she was like white collar, and she didn't work gangs, and so like he said because he goes around the FBI. I don't know if he doesn't do it anymore. He's got to be retired by now, but he used to. When I was in, he would go around giving this presentation, and he said, my girlfriend would give me a bunch of crap because I would be at the mall or at a food court. I'd say, oh yeah, that guy's 13th sect blood or whatever, right? And she's like, "Oh, you're so judgmental. You don't know that guy's a gangbanger." And he's like, "No, I know. Like that tattoo means blah blah blah." So there was all this going on where, she's in his head about, you're being judgmental or whatever. And so she said, "I'm cooking dinner tonight. You get home. You've been late every night getting home. You get home at 6 o'clock." So as he's coming home to his apartment complex, he sees two guys that he knows. He knows they're gangbangers because he's investigating that group. Like he knows them. And they're standing in front of his apartment complex, right at the gate, like what we call a choke point, in and out, right? Area mandatory travel. And then he starts to second guess himself, saying, "Oh, I shouldn't be that way. I shouldn't be that way." And he knows these guys are Crips or blah, 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 whatever gang. And he says he gets out of his car and he puts his gym bag over his shoulder, and he's got an MP5, which is a submachine gun. He's got that over his shoulder. It's in a bag and his lunch pail or something. And he starts shuffling up to these guys, and they separate so he can walk between them. And he says to himself, "It'll be okay." And as soon as he gets between them, they stick a gun in his face and they say, "Where are you going?" And they start patting him down and they feel his credentials, and he knows they're going to find that badge. And this guy, he said, "I made a big mistake. I didn't listen to my intuition. I didn't pay attention to my surroundings. I was using hope as a strategy." He said, "But the one thing I do is I practice drawing quickly. It didn't save my life." So he said what he did is he slapped this one guy on his right as he drew his weapon, and he shot the guy on the left. And then he shot the guy on the right. Like boom, boom, real quick hero stuff. And anyway, so he goes around the FBI not talking about his shooting prowess, but talking about how he didn't listen to his intuition. He did not listen, and they damn near got him killed. So there you go.
Hey girl, are you ready to change your life? Join us for SASSGO's I Will Survive weekend happening November 6th through 9th in Lawrence, South Carolina. Register anytime in July 2025 and use the code ONEGIRL, that's the number 1GIRL, to get $100 off this transformative weekend. I'll be there, and so will so many other of the One Girl Revolutions. So come and join the Sasterhood. And if you can't make it, please consider donating to help another woman attend. Let's lift one another up together and change the world. Visit sassgo.org to register or give today. Yeah, you talk a lot about how like our greatest weapon is our intuition, and especially women, that we need to pay attention to those scenarios. And even like the Target scenario where, women are walking out and they might see somebody, they're like, that looks shady. Go back in, go to the food court, get a Coke, sit down, call the cops, ask somebody to walk out with you. It's these very practical things that we need to be thinking about, and also giving ourselves permission. A lot of times people end up kind of trying to figure out the scenario, like, okay, who is this person? Why are they doing this? And that's what gets us into trouble.
Yeah, we try to also create stories. Like I talk about, don't create an alibi. People will create a story for something they see that's an anomaly. I mean, they see something that's really suspicious. The messengers of intuition are curiosity, suspicion, dark humor. And they'll see something, they're like, "Oh, that's weird." And then they'll make up a story that sounds great in their brain, right? And then they'll try to go with that one. And I always tell people, don't do that. Just if you're curious about something, pay attention to it. And if your intuition starts getting triggered, meaning, okay, get away from this thing, dummy, you need to listen to it. And the book, I really hope your listeners listen to read The Gift of Fear. But the reason women have better intuition than men is because they are sexually assaulted more than men. That's just a fact. All right, people don't like it. They don't want to hear it. It's just a reality. You can look up criminal statistics. Women are sexually assaulted more than men, period. So women are kind of more attuned to feeling as though, am I in danger here? Unfortunately, what happens is a lot of men, because, my world is dominated. It's like a male dominated profession. They'll say things to women like, "Don't be so paranoid." And it's really bad, right? Because what's happening is two bad things. One, the woman's being told to basically override her senses. That's bad. And the second is this official, former FBI or law enforcement or military, is telling me I'm paranoid. So he must be right. Well, I would tell women they're not right. They don't know what the hell they're talking about either. So don't do that. Your body is an amazing thing. I mean, the survival mechanism that's within us is amazing. It's designed for a reason. I mean, we've really adapted over all these centuries. But what we do is we dumb it down. And this is the biggest violator. This phone is the biggest violator because you'll see it. I mean, I promise you, you can walk outside your apartment or house right now and you will see 15 people driving around with a phone right here, right? Or walking their dog with a phone right here. It has become like I'm an anomaly now because I don't have a phone out in public and everyone else will. And they're like, why didn't he have a phone out? Right? That's how bad it is. But this thing is meant to distract you. That's all it does. And then you double down so you can't see. And then you put the earbuds in. Now you can't hear. So you're losing these senses that are so good at telling you danger is coming. It drives me insane, actually. But I'm not making a lot of money, but the app people are. So who's laughing? They're laughing, I guess. But I don't like that. That's why like people will ask me to endorse an app, a safety app. I won't do it. I will not do it.
It also takes you away, right? You think about even you're walking out in public, and I know a lot of times girls will be like, "Oh, I feel more comfortable talking to somebody on the phone," but that even takes your senses away, right? And then that's
Well,
one
it's a
hand.
false sense. What are they
Right.
going to do for you?
Right.
Right?
That's what I think about. It's like, what are they actually going to do? They don't know exactly where you are, even if they're tracking your phone by the time they can even call 911.
Too
And you
late.
talk about this too. It's like, yeah, it's great to call 911, but you need to be ready to fight or run away.
Yeah, because we've conditioned people to believe that if you call 911, it's like Star Trek and they're going to immediately, beam a cop to you. It doesn't work that way, right? And so that's the problem. I mean, there's a lot of problems we have in our society, but that's one of them is we've conditioned our population to just call 911 and they've literally just, got rid of all of the, stuff that can keep them alive. Well, I'll just call 911. Well, good luck with that. I mean, and I've done it, so that's the other part of, I guess, maybe why you like the message is because I've been 911. I've been a police officer. I know exactly how long it takes. It's too long. Like time is the thing. That time and distance is the thing. That's it. It's always comes down to those two things. Always. And so for me, like I don't mess around and waste time because it's the only thing I have. Right. And then distance always gives me some relatively safe, at least the ability to make a quicker decision. That's why I don't let people come up on me, right? That's distance. You want to keep them away till you feel comfortable. Um, you know, that's that's just how I live. And I'm not crazy and I don't walk around paranoid, but I certainly don't let someone stand behind me, and I certainly don't waste time by thinking that, fallacies that, oh, if I call 911, a cop will be here immediately. They won't. What am I going to do right now? Well, you better be moving. That's usually the right answer. In fact, I don't know when it's not, if you, unless you just can't, unless somehow, some way they got the drop on you, now you got to fight. But man, that is like not the best answer. Most people are not ready to fight for their life. They are not, and unfortunately, there's another one. Unfortunately, we tell the citizens of America, if there's an active shooter in your space, the three verbs are run, hide, fight. Well, 60% of Americans are obese. They can't run, right? And I don't know if they can fight either. So you're making a hell of a big of assumption, that you can run or fight. That's why it's always good to just stay in shape. When's that bad? Yeah.
Right. And even like practice through some of these scenarios, right? So if something were to happen it almost is like second nature. You know what to do. Of course, and I talk about this a lot with SASSGO, going to the I Will Survive weekend, going through the SASSGO training. Of course, I'm not going to do everything that, even if we practice one of the scenarios, I'm not going to do it perfectly, but I have all the tools that I'm then able to move forward and assess the situation and figure out what is best for me to do in that scenario.
Yeah, and I think, I'm probably a anomaly or a unicorn in this space. I don't hardly ever carry a gun. And everyone I work with or used to work with, that's like a big piece of their life. And I just don't do it. I mean, I could. I'm legally authorized to. I don't. Why? Well, because I know my brain's my ultimate weapon, and I like to fight. But I don't. I'm not saying to your listeners don't carry a gun, but if you are, make damn sure you're ready to use it. Um, but you can avoid so much. Just avoid it or get away from it. drive away from it, walk away from it until the time that where you can't, and that's where mental rehearsal comes in. Like what would I do? And you know, you don't need a bunch of moves. You need a couple you do real well. And for me, like I think you remember, like a cup of coffee is like a thing for me. And if you're ever around me and I take that lid off, you better get ready, right? Because it's coming.
That is one thing, James, that's ingrained in my mind, and I've used that tactic so many times. First of all, flashlight, which I
Mhm.
will link. I'll link to The Gift of Fear because I want to make sure that people read that book. And obviously anything from Gavin de Becker, but also I will link to the flashlight because I got home from the I Will Survive weekend and I was telling my husband about it. And he was like, okay, we're getting you, like, he got me like a bunch of flashlights and I have them everywhere. I carry them everywhere with me, but also a coffee. So you told a story when you were in New York and you were walking from an event to your hotel at night, you're a couple blocks away, you feel pretty safe, and you have a flashlight in one hand. And every time you leave an event or are walking somewhere, you get a cup of hot coffee. And I've thought about it because the amount of times I used to live in DC and the amount of times that I was going to a gala or even walking to a friend's car and having those two weapons, it changes almost any scenario, I feel like.
Oh yeah. I mean, and I guess, one of the things, like I have a YouTube channel where I talk about these little things, safety, I call it Safety Seconds with James. But one of the things I like to always talk about is weapons, and they're called improvised weapons. They're like things that aren't really weapons, but they can be used as such. I like to talk about things that you will be able to have at 40,000 feet or, in a restrictive environment like a jail or courthouse. Probably courthouse is a better example. But like at 40,000 feet, you're not going to have your gun or your taser or your OC spray, but you're going to have coffee, and you're going to have a fire extinguisher, and you're going to have a flashlight. So I like to have those types of things. And I like flashlights and coffee and hairspray. I like anything that can attack the eyes. And so, for your listeners, like one of the scenarios I talk a lot about is go into your car at night in a parking garage or a parking lot for that matter, especially a dimly lit parking lot. And like it starts with put the phone away, get your head up, get your phone or get your flashlight out. And that's another thing. I mean, a lot of people will say to me, well, James, I have a flashlight on my phone. Okay, that's your phone. That's not a flashlight. A flashlight is like a standalone high lumen count flashlight. So put your phone away and head up, look around, and then shine the light around your car before you get to it. So why do we do that? Well, one, of course, we do it so there's no one there. But second, we're projecting strength. I know criminals. I've interviewed them. I've worked with them. I've arrested them. Not worked with them, but chased them. And they tell me the same thing. Like I'm looking for the easy. I'm looking for an easy target type deal. Well, if you're projecting flashlights, like you're aware, what are you projecting? Oh, she's aware. She's prepared. You might have a gun. You might have a taser. You might be able to do some, I don't know, crazy karate kick. And so a lot of the bad folks will just move on and find an easier prey, right? That's what they're doing. And so you shine around your car, you press the key fob one time and the driver door opens, not all doors, one time, driver door, programmable. Make sure you change your settings. Get in your car and drive away, right? People don't hang out in parking garages. And I try to explain this to my audiences. If you see someone standing by your car, get the hell away from them because people don't hang out in parking garages. They park, they walk into the store, they get whatever they need, they come back, get in their car, and they drive away. Why is someone hanging out in a parking garage? Well, invariably, what someone will do is go, oh, it's okay. He's waiting for his wife to get off work. Okay, you don't know any of that. You don't know that he's married. You don't know that he has a wife that works there. You're making up a story to match the anomaly. Well, I know that that's a guy hanging out in a parking lot and I don't like it and I'm getting the hell away from it, period. Um, and what do you lose by that? You lose what, 5, 10 minutes of your life by having to go back inside the store? Who cares? But people don't want to do that. They want to make up a story and use HOPE, as a tactical plan, and that ain't it. So that's the flashlight thing for those listening. And that was, listen to what that was. That was part of that FBI story. That was part of my dad with the coffee, and it was part of my own understanding of the flashlight. Just like that thing is a good distraction device because, when you shine the light in someone's eye, their hands are going to come up. It's going to expose their waistline to let you know if they're armed, but it's also going to give you time to get away, time to side kick them, whatever it is you think you need to do at the moment. But I like to distract. That's why the coffee's so good. Because, I tell people, especially people who carry guns, if someone's got the drop on you, they're not going to let you get the gun out and have a fair fight. So you're going to have to get it out somehow. And the best way to do that is a distraction. Throw coffee, throw keys, throw something, even a glass of water, and then step off line, we call it, and then draw. And you're probably going to take a round, but hey, keep working. And even when I say that, people are shocked, but I've just dealt with hundreds of people who have been shot by a pistol and they're fine. You're not going to die immediately. Like I think people think that. They think, oh, if a guy has a gun, I'm going to die. Well, maybe not. But I promise you, you will if you totally give up and get in the trunk.
That's an important thing to bring up too. Like, so somebody comes up to you in a parking structure or a parking lot and they tell you to get in the trunk. What do you do?
So you missed them. You missed everything, right? So that's what you're telling me. You missed everything. You had your earbuds in, you're looking at your phone, and next thing you know, there's a guy standing there with a knife and he says, "Don't scream, get in the trunk." I would tell you to scream and don't get in the trunk. I would tell you to scream and run as fast as you possibly can. I would tell you to scream, throw your phone in his face, and run as fast as you possibly can. Are there people, and I know them, who have survived getting in that trunk? They have, and God bless them. But a lot of people don't. It's called going to a secondary crime scene. It's very bad. Um, and I'm not saying they did anything wrong because they're alive now, but a lot of people don't come back from that. So do your very best to not get into the trunk. But again, it's very, very hard for somebody to come up on you if you're paying attention. It's very difficult.
I was telling Shannon and Brett a story about when I was 4 years old, James. I had a neighbor girl that I was over at her house and we were playing Barbies and she wanted me to play with the ugly Barbie. And I was like, no, I'm going to go home. Like, I want to go home. And the girl jumped in front of the door and was like, don't leave or I'll scratch you. And Shannon, I never heard anybody analyze a story like that. Here I am, 4 years old. And Shannon was like, oh, she told you what she didn't want you to do. And that's so important for us to think about. Like the person that's holding a gun at you or a knife or whatever, they're telling you don't scream because they don't want you to scream. And that's such an important thing for women to know.
1,000,000%. And, again, to pay attention. Like it's okay. It's okay to see things and say to yourself, I don't like that. It's okay to and again, and I think a lot of my audiences will say, well, I'm being judgmental. Well, no, actually, you're not. You're actually just making an informed assessment, and you do that every single day in every other area of your life. That's what you're doing. But for some reason, you think you're judging people because you won't walk up to a stranger or let a stranger get near you. That's not what you're doing. You're just like making this assessment that, hey, I don't feel comfortable with this, right? And I think some people do it better than others. It comes with a lot of experience. But that's is it's okay to do it. And then, you know, there's so many examples, and Gavin talks a lot about this of, culture saying to women, you need to be nice. And in I think he said it on Oprah, that the company has a big threat assessment group, and they've assessed thousands of cases. I mean, thousands, and they've never assessed a case where a woman was victimized because she was rude. That never was what happened. It was always because she was too nice, because she said yes to things to a stranger, or let him stay too long, or listen to his nonsense about teaming. I talk a lot about teaming, or Gavin talks about it in the Gift of Fear. But if someone comes up to you in the Target parking lot and says, can I help you with your groceries? And you're like, no, well, he should walk away. Um, and if he's says something that, he doesn't hear your no, then you got a problem. I mean, that's a big piece of it. Create a boundary. You said no, and now he doesn't hear your no, and he says something that sounds an awful lot like, oh, don't be so prideful. Oh, they look real heavy. Let me help you. Okay, that's all you need to understand. Okay, this is a problem now. This is a really big problem. This isn't a guy who wants to help you with your groceries. This is someone who won't listen to the word no. When they don't listen to the word no, they don't respect you. If they don't respect you, they'll hurt you, or they can hurt you. That's just a fact. And so for me, like boundary setting is huge. You set that boundary, they violate it, you gotta do something. You gotta change your deal. And a lot of people don't do that, you know.
No is a full sentence, as
Yeah.
you often say, and it's important for women to practice that word. I think a lot of times we are trying to be too nice, like you said, or we're afraid what people are going to think if we start yelling. And it's women need to be comfortable and confident to see these scenarios and fight.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And they get that. I think a lot of them, they'll get to that point and they'll fight. I mean, that's pretty clear. I mean, there's a lot of historical examples where they got into a bad situation and they realize, okay, the only way out of this is to fight, and they do a good job. I mean, you see a lot of that, and sometimes it doesn't work out, but a lot of times it does, and you see that over and over and over again. I just wish that they didn't have to use those moves. I just wish they would, maybe pay attention a little bit better, listen to their intuition, and just leave the area, leave the environment, get away from that person. And it's always the person. That's it. I call it, claim it, call it, right? It's a person who's going to hurt you, right? It's not the car. It's not the trunk. It's that person, that two-legged threat standing there. Mm. That's what, and they're not monsters. I talk a lot about this. They're not monsters or madmen or any of that stuff. They're human beings, and they want to hurt you, and you have to understand that. And they're by and large, there's pre-incident indicators, there's behavioral, things that they show you that indicate, yeah, this is what's going to happen. Very rarely do they just, snap and then, pull out a knife. It's very rare, very rare.
We had a scenario here in Michigan that was happening a couple of years ago, and I know it was happening other places too, but it was really concentrated here where women would walk out to their cars at a mall or a grocery store, and there would be a shirt tied around their windshield wipers. And they ended up doing a whole campaign to say, if you see that, go back into the store. And you
Good.
even told a story recently about a judge in Texas who was driving home and there was a bag of leaves, I think, in her driveway. So it's also important for us to see those things because we might not see a person, but if you see something that your spidey senses go up to also say, walk away, run away, get somebody to help you, get somebody to walk you out to your car.
Yeah, and one thing really important that I would like to discuss is that's Judge Kucerik out of Texas, and I'm actually presenting with her, I think Sunday or Monday. Anyway, she, if you haven't ever heard her story, it's really something you got to watch on YouTube. But it's amazing. I've heard her a couple times, and the thing about her, but basically what happened, she's a judge in Texas. She had sentenced a guy, didn't remember it, whatever. And for whatever reason, he took issue with her. And this is what happens. They get fixated, they get obsessed, and then he gets released. And basically he told his girlfriend, I'm going to kill her. Or something like that. I'm going to kidnap her. I'm going to kill her. I'm going to get even, something like that. And the girlfriend did the right thing, called law enforcement. Law enforcement investigated it, never told the judge. And then they said it's not credible. And they closed the case. Judge had no idea. So she's coming home one day and she sees a guy jogging outside her house. And her intuition was, that's odd. I've never seen that particular person jogging in my neighborhood ever before. Had his hood up. It was hot Texas day. She's like, that's odd. But she didn't have the background information that law enforcement was looking at him. Didn't tell her, hey, look out for this guy because we got to, so they totally screwed up. But I think if she had been told that, she would have seen that and gone, oh, wait, that's him. And then, maybe the shooting doesn't happen, but no one told her. So she's like, that's odd. And anyway, she fast forward a couple days and she and her kids go to a football game. It's Texas. And they're coming back. And when they come back, the bag of leaves had been moved to the front of the driveway, right? So he did that. And so he knew, okay, they're going to have to get out of the car. When they get out of the car, I'll shoot them. And so her kid gets out of the car to move the leaves, and our bad guy comes and he shoots everybody. I mean, it's on. Um, yeah. So, you know, I think two things in that story. One, and I've dealt with this a lot, is you've got, people go the legal route. So there's what we call the safety route and the legal route, right? The legal route is tell law enforcement, get a protection order, get a restraining order, blah, 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 blah. Well, okay, I always tell people, okay, if you're gonna go that route, whatever, that's what you decide. I'm not sure that's the best idea, but whatever. But what's your plan when he shows up? And they'll say something like, oh no, there's a restraining order. And oh no, you don't understand. He can't come within 200 yards. Okay, but when he does, what are you gonna do? But why would he do that? There's a restraining order. But he doesn't care. What? Yeah, like, okay, what are you gonna do when he shows up? Fully expect him to show up, then what are you gonna do? So I like to go the safety route a lot of times, which is not the law enforcement route. I like to go the safety route and get the hell away and make this person unapproachable. But yeah, I just want to make sure your listeners get that just because a police officer is saying, "Oh, we got a restraining order, you're good or you're okay." I don't think that's a great idea. I think it's really smart to stay vigilant. And then the other thing on that is I have seen police officers write a report saying something like, we've assessed your stalking investigation and we believe he's not dangerous. I've read that. I've read a client of ours, Gavin had a report like that. Well, how in the hell can you ever say the human being's not dangerous? You cannot say that. And unfortunately, if it comes from a police official, now it's like extra credible. And so the victim literally is like, oh no, the police department said he's not dangerous. How the hell can you say that? Every human being is potentially dangerous. So I hate that. I hate that totally. So yeah, if you have a restraining order, that's whatever, but just fully expect, them to show up at, the two places are home and work, where, he knows you'll be home and work, fully have a plan. What do you do when he starts walking up? Okay.
Yeah, thinking about that location dependent, that
Yeah, a
attacks
million percent.
often are
Yeah.
location dependent and they want to get you into a place where they know that they can catch
Yep.
you. So,
That's right. That's right.
James, I will be sure to put the link to your YouTube so people, I know there's like so much that we can talk about, but I want to make sure that we get to our questions from
Sure.
our listeners. What are practical tips? I know you talked about some of them for women to protect themselves in everyday situations.
Well, first, be informed. I mean, start there. What's going on where you live? Because you might live in, Hastings, Nebraska, and there's like nothing really going on. You're probably okay. You might be able to jog. I don't know. But know what's going on where you live, right? And then, pay attention and then use your intuition. We all know what that is. It's that, gut feeling. It's knowing something without knowing why. If intuition's been triggered and you don't feel comfortable with an individual, put space between you and that individual. Period. Leave the phone in the damn purse or, in your wherever you carry it and keep your head up and pay attention. That's like the most important thing. And get a flashlight and get a dog. Like I can give you a billion different things to think about, but a dog's a great thing. It's great for the house. It's great for walking around the neighborhood. Um, Dogs are just great and they do everything an alarm system's supposed to do. And a lot of bad guys are afraid of dogs. And then, if you do have something happen, especially if it's targeting you, like ex-boyfriend type stuff, get professional guidance. And that doesn't necessarily always mean police officer. It might mean a threat assessment person. And there's a lot of companies that do that. But yeah, I think that's the big thing is listen to your intuition, practice an awareness, and then, get away from it. That stay in shape, get away from it. And don't buy a gun if you don't feel comfortable killing somebody. I cannot tell you if I had a dollar for every time I've had a client say to me or a friend of mine say to me, my husband got me a gun, but I just don't think I could ever kill anybody. Well, then you should not be carrying a gun. Like, period. Right? Like, period. So yeah. Hope that answers that.
Yeah, and there are so many other weapons. One of my mom's favorite weapons, James, was wasp spray. So I
Yeah.
always have wasp spray
Yeah.
next
I
to my
mean,
bed or like next to doors. And it's like, if you need it,
yeah, like I
it's
have this
there.
taser. Like I love tasers. I have them everywhere. This is called the Pulse taser. They're very small and civilians can buy them. They're really nice little pieces of gear, gives a guy a 30-second jolt and gives you time to get away. Love them. Got a bunch of them.
So, what about traveling? I know it kind of is a continuation of that, but women that are
Yeah.
traveling or staying in a hotel by themselves, like what are your practical tips there?
Yeah, let's start with just travel, and my daughter is on this like worldwide tour right now. She's going all over the world and a lot of travel. And one of the biggest things is, first of all, managing transitions. Well, first of all, don't get drunk on the airplane. All right, let's start there. Don't get drunk on the airplane. Okay, that's a good one. Maybe limit yourself. How about that? Let's just have one cocktail if we can. I'd prefer you not have any, but if you could just have one, that would be great. Because what happens is, and I've got pictures of them, there are guys that hang out in the transitional areas of airports, meaning outside baggage claim, and they're watching. And you'll notice them. You'll see them because they have nothing. They have no luggage, nothing. And they're looking. They're trying to pick out some female. And they'll come up and it'll sound something like, "Hey, don't take an Uber, don't take a cab. I've got a, great deal for you." So be aware of the transitions. Have a plan. Like taxi stands, I think are pretty good unless you're in like some country that's like completely nuts. But Uber's okay, but taxi stands good. Those are legit cabs. Get in there. There's usually people around. You get in the cab, and go where you need to go. Don't take a car service that you don't know, and definitely don't take the guy that says I'll do it for $20 when it's $100 cab ride. Definitely don't do that. But they're looking. So that's transitions. So manage that, right? Have a real plan for the transition. Know where you're going. Okay, so here's a big one. Okay, we're landing at the airport, and like that hotel is usually most people are going from the airport to the hotel or airport to venue. Like let's say they're speaking or something or going to a conference. But okay, airport to hotel. That's a north thing, river on your right. Like you looked at the map, you're supposed to go north, rivers on the right. Okay, when you're driving, that damn well better be what you're seeing. And if it's not, what do? You bail out of the car the next time it stops. You leave your luggage. That's what you do. What? Yes. Right. So that's that. And then hotel wise, just stay at a reputable hotel. I'm not a huge fan of Airbnb. I don't want to get in trouble with Airbnb, but how many stories have you ever read about guys filming people in the Airbnb? How many times? Right? I don't feel comfortable, right? I don't. Now I know it might be a great business model and people might like to do it, but I like to go to a reputable hotel chain, Hyatt, Hilton, Marriott. Don't stay above the sixth floor. Engage the lock service. Put up the little sign. Yeah. And other than that, are there little things you could travel with that make the door a little bit stronger? Yeah, maybe. But and again, look to see what do you have? Is there security? Is there any type of plan for that? Is there anyone hanging around the hallways, which there shouldn't be? Um, how quickly? Okay, here's a good one for hotels. Like, do they have the card key on the elevator? Great. And if they don't, problem. Right? What do I mean by that? I'm staying in a hotel the other day, and this homeless guy walks in. And he's like, "I'm going up to the seventh floor," and this little girl working behind the counter was like, "Oh, okay," and they didn't have that feature. They didn't have that card feature. And sure enough, the guy gets on the elevator, goes up to the seventh floor. And I asked her, I'm like, "Why don't you all have the card key feature?" She's like, "Yeah, we really need that, don't we?" I'm like, "Who was that guy?" She goes, "I don't know. I think he sleeps in the park across the street." I'm like, "What would make you call law enforcement about that?" She's like, "You think I should?" I'm like, "Yeah, I think you should." So that's what I mean, that's just a quick one on hotels and transport. Friends are good. And I think for women, obviously, bars are trouble, especially overseas, especially in areas that are, considered, and just do some homework. Do some homework. Put in on your Google search, date rape being utilized in Rio. Let's say you're going to Rio. Just do some homework. Um, and that's a hard one. That's a hard one because men usually aren't don't get hit with that drug, but women do, and that's a hard one.
Well, traveling in groups, I know is so important.
Yeah.
So Ubers, you brought up Ubers. One thing that you said last year at the I Will Survive weekend is that you sit behind the Uber driver. Talk about
Mhm.
that.
Yeah, I just want to make them uncomfortable. So very first thing, you order it up, and then you they pull up and you verify. You make sure that license plate is the one on the Uber app. And then you get in on the driver's side behind the driver. Why? Well, because that's the most advantageous position for you and the most disadvantageous position for the driver. From that position, I can do an awful lot to him, right? I can use his seatbelt to choke him if I need to. But then I'll say to him, all right, this is the guidance I give women. Hey, my app says it's 16 minutes. Is that what you have? And he'll say something like, yes. And then you say, okay, because my boyfriend is tracking this movement. He's going to meet me there. Okay. Well, if this Uber driver is like got some, nefarious intent, then he might hear that and go, okay, I probably don't want to mess with this. If he's a legit guy, he's gonna go, okay, whatever, I don't care. So that's what I like to do. And then again, you got to know where you're going, and then you make sure that that's matching the route you're supposed to be taking. If there's any deviation at all, you ask him, what are you doing? And if he doesn't give you an answer that you're comfortable with, bail out of the car. Yeah.
Great advice.
Oh, and also just check the child locks. It's pretty rare, but once you get in, make sure you can open the door.
Mm.
And that's very simple. You just unlock it, try to open the door, and if you can, fine. And if you can't, there's the child lock's been engaged, so make sure he doesn't leave yet. Just start screaming, "Hey, whoa, 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 whoa! Why are these doors locked?" And then get out. Like you're not taking that Uber. Even if he says, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I had my kids in here last night." Bullshit. No, don't take that Uber. Get out. Cancel the ride. Ask for another one.
So another question we got was about an active shooter situation. This individual was with her child in an active shooter situation. I believe it was in a parking structure, but it could be applicable to anything, grocery store, movie theater. What should a parent with a kid do in that situation? And maybe we'll talk about if you're just an individual adult, you don't have a kid, because I know it might change a little bit.
It does, and that's a good question. I mean, very first thing, obviously, I go through this whole thing in my seminar, but you know, prioritization is super important. How do you prioritize? Like, how do you make, God, I went through this with my daughter the other day, but like, how do you make decisions? Well, it's either morally, there's some moral thing, like I got to make a decision based on morals or ethics, or prioritization. Okay, what's the priority? Okay, you are, your life. Second, well, I've got my kid with me. They're the priority. Okay, so like I tell my audiences, like I might not intervene in something going on and I know I can take the guy out, but I may not intervene in that because my wife's with me and she's my priority. Sorry, y'all don't get that. They're like, that's kind of mean. Uh-huh. Yeah, you're right, it is. It's kind of callous. I know. Or I could be at dinner with somebody and go, okay, I need to get the hell out of here because some bad stuff's happening. And that person that I'm eating dinner with could go, no, I'm scared. I'm not moving. Okay, I'm going to leave you. What? Yeah, I am. I'm going to leave them. That's really callous, James. Yeah, I know. It is. I got it. But active shooter with a kid, it's run time. Let's go, honey. We're running. And hopefully you've played games with your kid where, like catch mommy, catch daddy, let's run. You don't need to tell them why we're running, but let's run and let's run to safety. And that may not be the exact same way everyone else is running. So I always tell people take a quick second to get your bearing, understand where the threat is, and move the opposite direction. If you cannot run, if you cannot get out, like let's say he's in the hallway, then get into a room, lock the door, and find a weapon, get ready to go to work. That's the answer, right? Um, yeah. If you can't get into a room and you can't run, then obviously you're gonna have to fight the guy. But that's last resort. Not great. Not great. Especially if you don't have any skills and you don't have any tools, right? Um, so that for me with the kid is that run, get away. And if you're by yourself, probably same thing holds. But the kid and tell them where you're going. That's the other thing. I mean, God forbid you take a round, but they need to go where are we going? Where are we running to? Yeah. Gas station down on the right type deal.
Looking for stories of women who are changing the world? The One Girl Revolution podcast is your go-to for inspiration and empowerment. Subscribe today on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts and never miss an episode. Let's celebrate the power of women together. How did you talk to your kids about all of this? Or I know they're still growing. How did you approach this? Your kids?
Um, in the beginning, you'd make a game out of it, things like, hey, who can get in the car the fastest and put their seatbelt on, you get a treat. And the other thing that I did a lot of was listen to them when they say, hey, did you see that strange guy? Stop everything. Stop everything you're doing, put your damn phone away, look them dead in the face and say, hey, what'd you see? Good job, by the way. But what'd you see? And then they can explain it. And now they're hearing, I'm being rewarded for paying attention. I've seen so many parents, yell at Timmy because, oh, don't be like that. We don't live in a neighborhood like that. We send you to a private school. Don't be like that. Well, that's just awful. Awful. You're basically handicapping that kid for the rest of his life. So that's what we did. And I think through my work, they knew what I did, and I was always okay, like, all right, a good example. We might be walking, to a venue or to a restaurant, and I will say under my breath, like very sternly, get behind me right now. And then they would move behind me. And they knew like there was something I didn't like on the sidewalk. Right. And we get in the restaurant and I would explain. And my son would be like, what'd you see? And I'd tell him, he's like, oh, okay. And then I only needed to do that once. Then they knew I need to get behind. When I say get behind me, they know exactly what to do. Um, I did a lot of that, a lot of that. Or we just leave. Okay, we're not eating here. Let's go. And then I explain it when we got in the car. Um, or another good one is like, hey, where's the bathroom? What? We'd sit down, get the menus, close your eyes, tell me where the bathroom is. And then I'd make them point. Oh, okay. Where's the exit? Right. And they'd point. Okay. Now we know how to get out. Now we know where the bathroom is. Bathrooms are great. Well, not just because you need to go to the bathroom, but because it's always windowless. Okay. It's a windowless room that you can get into and close the door and somehow, some way secure the door. And it's a good place for what we call hard point or just secure and go in there and stay in case some bad stuff kicks off. It's always good to know where that is, And so they have been, I'm not going to say conditioned, but they definitely have a pretty good sense. But they also have to live, And so as a parent, it's very, very difficult because you just sort of like, oh God, I hope I did enough.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard for parents because at some point you have to let your kids
Yeah,
go out and be in the world. And so it's
yeah,
important to train them like all of us have, where it's like just where it almost becomes second nature to think about those things and not live in fear
yeah.
because you know where the exit is, you know where the bathroom is, and you know what your plan is if something were to happen.
And having daughters is harder than having boys. I mean, for my son, I just tell him, don't let a girl get carried out of a bar. And I have to tell my daughter, don't be the girl getting carried out of a bar.
This question comes from a soon-to-be mama. She said, "What's your advice for a mom pushing a baby stroller in a city, DC as an example? What should she do and or have on her to protect her and her baby?"
Well, that's a lot. That's a lot because that's a target that's tough, meaning you're not very mobile because you got the baby. So obviously awareness and no phone is critical. Um, I would not say gun, but I wouldn't say it's a bad idea. Um, I wouldn't say it's a bad idea. Taser's good if it's legal. DC, no. Spray's good. Unfortunately, it might hit the baby. Is it one of those strollers that's not super heavy? That's a good one. So, like, you know how they make those strollers that are like light for jogging that people buy and they're like made of probably something like carbon fiber? Um, could you get one of those? Because you might be able to run, right? If you're in good shape. If you're not in good shape and you got one of those big heavy strollers, well, obviously you can't leave the kid. So now you got to fight, or use awareness to try to move away from it. But if you can't move away from it, you're going to have something to help you fight. Can you take a dog? Do you have a dog? Get a dog. Dogs are great. Get a German Shepherd, get a Malinois, get a boxer, get something that is going to like be a deterrent. People are just going to see it and go, I don't want to get near that. Right. But if you don't want any of that, then you got to seriously consider having some type of tool, taser, gun, pepper spray, if it's legal and you're wherever you are. Um, or lastly, DC is not bad for crowds, not bad to be with other people. Be with other people as you're walking the baby. That would be good. Try not to do it at night when you're alone. Like try to not get to the situation where you're alone. Um, yeah. that would probably be my starting point. And then putting the kid in, like have a real plan. Like, okay, I hit the button that opens up the back thing. The kid's already in my arms. I chuck the stroller in there. I open the sliding door. I get into the car, close the sliding door, put the baby in, then I jump in the driver's seat. Like that might be a plan. Versus they open the slider and they're putting the baby in from outside and someone can walk up on them. I don't like that so much. Like really have like some choreographed type safety, closed door, locked, then I'm putting the baby in type move versus the other. I've seen there's a girl on Instagram does something with a golf cart, or I'm sorry, a grocery cart where she puts the cart between her and the bad guy. But why not go ahead and get inside, especially if you have a minivan. Minivans are great, but get in the slider and then put the kid in the seat and then climb over into the driver. I think that's good. I like that because you can do it from a locked door. Yeah.
There's a friend of mine has this new stroller. It's one of those lighter ones, but the car seat is a light car seat, but it literally pops out. You hit a button and it pops out. I was thinking about that as you were speaking because I was like, that seems like a
Yeah.
really good, if you're going to be walking your baby around, a light stroller, but also something that has an eject button that you can quickly grab the baby and run.
Yeah, anything that cuts down time. But you got to practice it. I think that's super important. And it's a really good question because I think a lot of people, just take things for granted. And I say this a lot in my classes, but most Americans will research their new car more than they'll research their kid's football coach or their kid's Boy Scout troop leader or their kid's babysitter. That's crazy to me. But it's true. We just assume. But we don't assume anything about that car you want to buy. You do all the research.
So, what about for the good guys? We have men that listen to this podcast as well because they love to be inspired by women. What about the good guys? What would you say to them and what advice would you give to them?
Well, I'd start with the, Mark Lapine incident is where I would start. And if those that don't know it, you can Google it, but I'll just tell you the story very quickly. Mark Lapine was a young man who was dealing with whatever issues, and he walked into a college in Canada and he said, I want all the women to go on the left, and I want all the guys to go on the right, as he has a rifle. And he says, because I'm going to kill every one of these girls. And he tells the guys to leave, and 50 men, 50 men, walk out of the class, and they let him kill 9 girls. That really happened. So I would tell anybody listening, what is your line? What is the thing that you would say, okay, I don't know anyone here, but I'm not going to let that happen. Like, what is your line? Right? And believe me, you got to do it right now. You got to already know, okay, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to let that happen. Because I promise you, those 50 guys that walked out of that Lapine class, not all of them, but most of them probably are dealing with demons every day. And they regret not doing something. So I would tell guys, have a line. What is it for you? You know, um, did I do the convenience store?
No.
Maybe I told you the story. Maybe I didn't. So, I was in a convenience store after a presentation, and I went to go get coffee. And I walk in and so convenience store, immediately you're already thinking in your mind what you should see and hear as you walk in, right? Um, because if you hear something or don't hear something, or you see something or don't see something that should be there, then you're already having an anomaly. So I walk in, and it's typical. There's some girl behind the counter, not very many people inside, whatever, not loud noises. I go to the coffee machine and I hear this guy before I see him. I hear the voice, and he screams, and no one usually screams in a convenience store. And he screams, "Hey, baby, what time do you get off?" I'm like, mother. So I get my coffee and I turn around and I see him, and he's like, typical, nitwit. And the girl's very uncomfortable. And I could tell that, she is not feeling it. She doesn't know the guy, she's uncomfortable, and he won't stop. And so I walk up to the counter and he's standing there and he's like, go ahead. I'm like, no, you go ahead. And he's like, no, I'm just talking to her. I said, no, why don't you go ahead and buy what you need to buy? Right. And he's like, what? I'm like, no, go ahead. He goes, no, no, you go. And I take the lid off the coffee, right? Because I know what I'm getting ready to do to this guy. I'm going to throw this coffee in his face. I'm going to take out his legs. I'm going to just leg sweep him. Um, and then I tell him last time, I said, man, you need to go ahead and buy what you need to go get the hell out of here. And so he leaves and she's got tears in her eyes. She's like, thank you. I'm like, you're welcome. Okay. So for me, there was a line and that was the line. I wasn't going to let this happen. And I just decided to get involved. Now, if my kid had been with me, I probably wouldn't have done that, by the way. Why? Because it's prioritizations. But if it's just me, and there's certain things I just am not going to put up with. So for those listening, I would say, what is it for you? What is something you would not put up with? How about a girl being carried out of a bar and you see it? Would you get involved? Would you say something? Would you do something? Would you man up? Because that's what we need. We need guys to go, I'm not putting up with that one, right? We need that. That's what we need.
Last question is about SASSGO, because I know that you have a great relationship with SASSGO and you present at the I Will Survive weekend, which I'm so grateful that you do. And I know everybody who goes to the I Will Survive weekend, that they're so grateful for your time and for your guidance throughout that. For people that are listening, why is the work of SASSGO and the I Will Survive weekend so critical from your perspective?
Well, there's a lot of answers to that. I mean, I think the first one is it might be the only place I'm aware of that starts to give your life back, like because unfortunately a lot of the folks that have gone or that do go to the weekend have been victimized. And through whatever medical or law enforcement or psychologist, whatever they've tried to do to make things better after the incident, I find that when they go to SASSGO, that especially that weekend, they do feel like I'm getting my voice back. I'm feeling empowered. I'm feeling as though I can live my life, not be scared. So I mean, I could give a bunch of reasons as to all the good work they're doing, but to me, that's like the big one, because I've seen it. I've seen so many testimonies and so many people who, like, I met as a victim, and then they became an instructor, for instance, and now they're empowering other girls. So for me, it's like they're doing the thing that these government agencies are supposed to do, but don't, right? Um, and well, of course, there's also authenticity. Shannon and Brett and everyone really over there, they're authentic, they're real, and you know it. Versus, okay, like if you deal with someone from the government who is just a bureaucrat who isn't really invested, not authentic, they don't care. It makes you feel like they don't care, right? And that's a huge deal. That's a huge piece of it. So, I mean, for me, it empowers and it's authentic. These are real people who've really been through things, and they care. They care about you as a person, and they care about you getting better. And I'll tell you, I mean, I struggle with my piece of that weekend just because, you know, unfortunately, they have been victimized, and I wish I could have talked to them before. You know what I mean? Like I wish I had been able to talk to them when they were 12 or 13, so that maybe I could have said something that would help them not get to that point. Um, but yeah, they do a lot of really, really good work, and I always recommend it. So when I'm dealing with a client and they're like, "Hey, my daughter's getting involved," I said, "Go with SASSGO, call them." Like that's what you should be doing, is because they prepare. That's the other thing. Empower, prepare, and they're authentic.
Yeah, well, I think it's so inspiring to me. It was transformative for me, James, in so many different ways. And I sort of went because I knew Shannon, I had had her on the podcast. I was like, oh, this sounds cool. Like, I'll go do it. And it changed my life. And I think every person that has been, it changed their life in so many different ways. But the thing that's most inspiring to me is the resilience of women. And you talked about like, you wish that you could have trained these women before something happened to them, but the power that women have to change the lives of the up and coming generations, right? Their children, their children's children. Like women have so much power in that. And that's what I love so much about the I Will Survive weekend.
Yeah, and I think, you know, it's funny when I think about that. I always think about them and I think about, I might have to dial it back a little bit like when you graduate or whatever, I got to kind of dial you back a little bit because like you're so ready to go to work, right? You're so ready. I always say you're like a cold snake ready to strike. And it may not happen, right?
Mhm.
It may not ever happen where you got to use all this stuff that you've been taught. But I like to say, at least the stuff I'm teaching you, you can use every single day. You can use your brain and your awareness and your intuition every single day. And, hopefully you never have to use those moves, but if you do, then you know them, right? But maybe don't strike at the very first person that walks up to you because there are still some nice people out there. Like I was going to help some lady with her flat tire the other day, and I was like, God, I literally walk up with my hands like this, like, man, can I help you? And like, why are your hands up like that? And like, I'm trying to show you I don't have a weapon. I come in peace, all these things, because if it's some sass or she might like, do something terrible to me. Um, but I definitely want to create, I want to try to help, but I understand when they say no. I totally get it when they're like, no, I'd rather try to do this tire on my own in 100-degree heat because I don't want to trust a stranger. I'm like, yes, ma'am, I get it. And I drive away. But I really could have fixed that tire thing, but that's the culture we're in.
Yeah, I'm laughing because, and I did tell this to Shannon and Brett, that after the I Will Survive weekend, I was sitting in the airport flying back to Detroit, and I felt like Jennifer Lopez at the end of Enough, after she killed her ex-husband. And I was like, if anybody even came up to me, like, I'm going to take you down. Then I get home and I was telling my husband all about it. And I was like, hey, let me show you these moves. And I think he might still be a little bit afraid of me because because they do train you. They train you when
Yeah.
you're ready. But what I love so much about it is it really like provides the tools that you're able to be aware. I loved so much your presentation because it just taught me to think about things in a different way. And even like the flashlight and the coffee, very practical things that all of us can use.
Yeah.
James, I actually had one question from a listener that I forgot. How do you protect children when they have access to the internet? And I know that's a loaded question.
Well, you're giving it to them. That's what I always tell parents. You're doing this, right? Like this thing. Okay, I forget who did it. There was some project, right? Some company project thing. And they did this like very quick, like, how long does it take for my kid to get hit with some type of craziness on this phone? Like, right? Like, how long does it take? And it was minutes. Um, okay. But pedophiles know that and they target, right? And so I love parents who tell me, I don't give my kid a phone. They don't get a phone until they're whatever, 15. It kills me when I see parents giving a 6-year-old a phone and that 6-year-old's in the restaurant on the phone while the parents are talking. It kills me, and they just don't want to fight. They just want to go along. They want to, oh, well, everyone else has a phone. I gotta give Timmy a phone or he'll be sad. Well, your job's not to be Timmy's friend. Your job is to be Timmy's parent, right? There are other, there are Covenant Eyes or other types of, software that you can put on a phone. But yeah, I would tell you it's very, very, very difficult. And I'm not some hypocrite. My kids had phones and my kid was on his computer more than he should have been. I'll just tell you. And I don't know who he was talking to. And I probably should have done a better job and I didn't. But it's hard. It is really difficult because it's such a big part of our culture. Um, but I would tell parents if you walk in and they immediately slam that laptop, you got a problem. I've seen that. Um, can they approach you? Are you approachable? Because they might get down a rabbit hole on the internet and something bad will happen and they don't feel like they can come tell you about it. So make sure you're approachable and you've always told them that. Um, but I would try your very best to avoid giving them full access to a phone, you know, as long as you possibly can. Because it is so prolific. Sports is great. If you get them involved in something other than video games or other than computer games, like get them in sports, get them in Boy Scout, well, whatever. I don't know. Something that's not the phone.
Right. Dance, art,
Yeah,
whatever the
yeah,
thing is, some sort of activity. I think that's so missing from our culture. And I know that there are a lot of people that are going back to that because we sort of swung so far with the access to phones and internet and social media. You see little kids with social media and you're like, why are they on there? This is, yeah, it's problematic.
It's a huge problem. Yeah.
James, you care so deeply, obviously, about protecting women and girls, but also protecting the innocent in so many different ways. If you could get to the very root of why you do what you do every single day, or why you're so passionate about the work that you do, what would you say that is?
Hmm. I'm sure there's some childhood thing. I mean, I don't really want to go into it too much here. But it's a lot about just the world doesn't have to be this way, and I think for me, I mean, that's the biggest piece of it is especially with kids. I've just seen it, like so much that it doesn't have to be like that. And they don't have to kind of grow up that way. And I've seen, if you give them positive, a positive male role model in their life, I've seen that. I've seen, like some of the people that I remember from my childhood were like my coach, my football coach, really made an impact. He doesn't know to this day, Granville, if you're listening, Granville Jones, you'll never know. But I think he was a mechanic somewhere, and he just really made a big impact in my life because he was a positive male role model. I don't know. I just feel like I've learned so much over my life that I can give back and help folks and not make mistakes that I made type deal. But also, I think I think to answer your question maybe a little better is I've suffered loss and I've felt loss and I've known loss and you know, it didn't have to happen. Like a friend of mine got killed at the sheriff's department. It didn't have to happen. He didn't have to die. Um, and so that's why, like when I talk about practical, you said it, that it's practical. Because I know that that's what makes a difference, and if I know these things, I should at least help people understand them also. So we're not, you know, uh, making mistakes, the same mistakes. Like stop that, and there's just so much crap out there. That's the other thing that just drives me insane is there's so much nonsense, especially in my space, in the world I'm in. Just things that are completely ridiculous. And I don't want people to have to hear that and go, oh yeah, that's the way I'm supposed to do it, you know? So I don't know. I hope that answers your question. I've always been very passionate about really everything I do. But yeah, I don't know. I can't really answer it greatly because I've been in the space for 33 years. I don't do anything else. And I'll do it till the day I die. Like I won't retire. There's no retirement for me. Um, I don't know. I really do care about safety and keeping people alive and you know, I don't know. It's hard. It's hard to explain.
Yeah, well, I think you did explain it. And James, I'm so grateful for you and for all the great work that you do and for training the I Will Survive women. I'm excited to see you again this year. I know people that are listening, if they want to come to the I Will Survive weekend, we actually have a promo code so people can check that out. I'll put that in the show notes so they can come to the I Will Survive weekend and hear more from you. I will put your websites, I will put the link to, everything that we talked about, books, all the different things. But for people that want to work with you, how can they get connected to you and what can they do to work with you?
Yeah, you can go to my website, hamiltonsecurity.group.com. There's a contact page. Just fill it out. I'll get back to you. Or somebody on the staff will, but it's probably going to be me. And then just however I can help you is probably training or consultation. Yeah, let me know. And I believe in ridiculous responsiveness. So if you hit me up, I'll get back to you real quick. And I won't waste your time because I know you won't waste mine. And, hopefully I'll leave you better than I found you.
James, you are such a gift, and I'm so grateful for you to know you. And I'm so honored to share your story and all of your incredible work and your guidance with all of our listeners. Before I let you go, I always ask the people that are on this podcast, who is a one girl revolution in your life? So I want to ask you, who is a woman or girl that inspires you?
Well, there's a lot of them, but I mean, my wife is without a doubt. Yeah, I can't really even explain, like just what a gift she is. Um, yeah, I'm getting a little choked up thinking about it. But yeah, my wife for sure.
I love that both of the men that we had on this podcast gave a shout out to their wives, because I know even with the work you do, it takes a really incredible woman to walk alongside you with this work. And I know there have been difficult scenarios and situations that you've been in. And so it takes a really special woman. So shout out to your wife. The last question that I always end this podcast on, James, is if you could leave women and girls around the world with one message, what would it be?
I think it would be the motto of my company, which is, live with courage. Um, it's not easy. And you've seen it. You've seen people who kind of stay through a bad situation because it would be really hard to leave. It'd take a lot of courage to leave, or it takes a lot of courage to say the right thing or do the right thing. So live with courage, and oh man, oh, golly, that would be it. Live with courage.
Well, I am so grateful to have you on this podcast. I know everyone loved listening in to our conversation. James, thank you so much for all the incredible work that you do. And thank you for being on the One Girl Revolution podcast.
Thanks for having me. Y'all be safe. Thanks.
For more from One Girl Revolution, to listen to all of our podcast episodes, watch our Emmy-nominated documentary series, follow us on social media, donate to our nonprofit organization, and more, please visit onegirlrevolution.com. That's the number onegirlrevolution.com.